The evening sky above the spaceport burned with the glow of hundreds of starships. Engines roared like angry beasts as metal giants rose toward the heavens, leaving trails of fire in the clouds. Vendors shouted prices. Travelers hurried with bags. Children cried. Security drones hovered overhead. It was the same chaos every single day. And among all this noise, one man walked slowly, carrying a small bag of groceries. His back was straight even though his hair had turned white. His hands were rough, his clothes simple, his eyes tired. To everyone around him, he was just another old man living a quiet life on the edge of the galaxy. But 15 years ago, this same man had commanded a ship whose name once made enemies tremble. He had been a captain, a hero, a legend people whispered about in dark bars and military camps. Then, one day, he vanished. No one knew why. Some said he was dead. Others said he ran from the war. The truth? He had simply walked away, tired of death, tired of glory, tired of carrying the weight of an entire galaxy on his shoulders. For 15 years, he stayed away. No ships, no battles, no titles, just peace. Until today. It started when he heard footsteps behind him. Light, quick steps trying to catch up. At first, he ignored them. Spaceports were full of people. But then someone spoke his name. Not the name he used now. Not the quiet, ordinary name he gave people. The name from the past. The name that had been buried with the war. Captain. He froze. Slowly, he turned. A young woman stood a few steps away. Her cloak was worn from travel, dust covering its edges. Her hair was pale silver, falling over blue-gray skin that caught the evening light. Her eyes glowed faintly, like twin moons under a stormy sky. Clearly not human. She looked at him the way soldiers look at a flag after losing a war, with reverence, with grief, with memories too heavy to carry. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, her voice shaking as if she couldn't believe this was real. "It's an honor to serve you again, Captain." The noise of the spaceport faded. The shouts, the engines, the vendors, all of it seemed far away now. No one had called him captain in 15 years. The old man felt his chest tighten. He studied her face, searching his memory. Something about her was familiar. The eyes, maybe, or the way she stood tall despite the exhaustion on her face. But he couldn't place her. "Do I know you?" His voice was low, rough from years of silence. She nodded slowly. "You saved me," she said, "on the Orion front. I was a child then, hiding with the others when the enemy attacked. Your ship took us in. You gave us food. You gave us a chance to live." Orion front. The name hit him like a punch. He remembered fire in the skies. He remembered running rescue shuttles through enemy blockades. He remembered soldiers dying so refugee ships could escape. And somewhere in those memories, maybe a frightened alien child had been there too. "I never forgot you," she said softly. The old man felt a weight pressing against his heart. For 15 years he had buried those memories, locking them away like old weapons. And now, one girl with silver hair had opened the door with a single sentence. He shook his head slowly. "Child, I'm not a captain anymore. Those days are gone." But the girl stepped closer. Her eyes burned with urgency now. "No, the galaxy needs you again. The war you ended, it's coming back. And this time, it will be worse." The old man turned away sharply. He didn't want to hear this. Not again. He had given enough. He had lost enough. But the girl wasn't finished. "They are building fleets," she said, her voice rising. "I've seen the reports. I've seen the weapons. Whole planets will burn if someone doesn't stop them. And everyone says the same thing, that only you can do it. Only the captain who made the enemy fear the stars themselves." The old man closed his eyes. Around them, the spaceport carried on, crowds moving, ships landing, merchants shouting. But inside him, silence. He had wanted a quiet life. He had wanted to disappear. And yet, 15 years later, the galaxy had come knocking again. Finally, he turned back to the girl. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you were the one who ended the last war," she said simply. "And because the enemy still fears your name." For a long time, he said nothing. Then, with a voice heavy as the years behind him, he said, "Tell me everything." And at that moment, the captain began to return. The girl's words hung in the air like smoke after a battle. The old man, once called captain, stood silently, his face unreadable. He had asked her to tell him everything, but now that the past was rising again, part of him wished he hadn't. They found a quiet corner near the edge of the spaceport. The girl removed her hood, revealing a young but tired face, marked with faint scars, the kind only war leaves behind. She began to speak. 15 years ago, she said softly, you saved my people. Do you remember the refugee ships on or IN4? The name twisted something inside him. He remembered. He wished he didn't, but he did. The memories came back slowly, like shadows creeping into the light. He saw himself younger, stronger, wearing the captain's uniform of the United Earth Fleet. He remembered the Starlance, his ship, fast, armed to the teeth, but carrying not just soldiers, also hope. He saw the day or IN4 burned. Enemy warships had surrounded the planet. Millions of civilians were trapped below as fire fell from the skies. No help was coming. The Earth fleet had been too far away, too slow. By the time his ship arrived, the planet was already half destroyed. He remembered giving the order, land anyway, against command's warnings, against every regulation. He had taken the Starlance through enemy fire to rescue whoever they could. They saved thousands, but they lost hundreds of soldiers doing it, including his best friend. The old man's jaw tightened at the memory. That was the day he stopped believing war had heroes. That was the day he began to wonder if victory was worth the cost. He had won medals afterward. The galaxy had called him a savior, but in his heart, he felt only the weight of names carved into stone. And so, when the war finally ended years later, he disappeared. Now this girl stood before him, living proof of what they had saved and what he had lost. I was on the Silverwing, she said, her eyes distant. One of the last refugee ships. The enemy was closing in. I remember explosions, screams. Then your ship came out of nowhere, like a ghost from the stars. You covered us until we escaped. He could almost hear it again. The voice of his pilot shouting enemy positions, the thundering of the ship's guns, the moment the Silverwing jumped to safety while his own ship stayed behind to hold the line. Yes, he remembered now, and he remembered the cost. He had buried those memories for 15 years. The girl's voice pulled him back to the present. After the war, she said, my people rebuilt. We tried to stay out of the galaxy's fights. But things have changed. The old enemy is back. New leaders, new weapons. They're stronger this time. The old man frowned. Stronger how? They have a fleet, she said. Bigger than before. Faster. And they're not hiding anymore. Whole colonies have vanished already. Our spies say they're building something huge. Her hands shook slightly as she spoke. He could see fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for the world she spoke of. He looked away, his gaze drifting toward the departing ships in the sky. He had wanted a quiet life. He had earned it, hadn't he? But the galaxy had a way of dragging men like him back into the fire. Why come to me? He asked finally. There are generals now, admirals, younger, better men. The girl shook her head. The new fleets fight like soldiers. But you fought like a ghost. Like someone the enemy couldn't predict. They still speak your name with fear. The old man said nothing. She stepped closer. I found something, she said in a low voice. Something that belongs to you. From her cloak, she pulled out a small metallic emblem. He froze. It was the insignia of the Starlance. His ship. His command. The ship everyone thought was lost after the war. He reached for it slowly, like a man touching a grave. Where did you get this? His voice was barely a whisper. The ship isn't gone, she said. It's hidden, buried on a dead world. Waiting. The old man stared at the insignia in his palm. Memories flooded back. His crew, his battles, his promises. The Starlance, his ship, waiting for him. For 15 years, he had been a ghost. But now, piece by piece, the past was calling him back. And deep down, he knew the girl was right. The war was coming. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy still needed its captain. Night had fallen over the spaceport when the girl finally told him the truth. They sat inside a small, dim cafe near the edge of the landing platform. The place was nearly empty, the noise of the city muffled by thick walls. A single lamp flickered above their table. The old man sat across from her, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of cold tea he hadn't touched. His eyes stayed on the table, but his ears listened to every word. The girl leaned forward, speaking softly as though the walls themselves might be listening. "The enemy you fought before," she said. "They were broken after the last war. Scattered. But they didn't die. They went into the dark. Rebuilt, waited." The old man didn't move. The girl's voice grew tighter. "We thought they were gone for good. Everyone did. For years. Nothing. Then, 3 years ago, colonies started disappearing." He looked up slowly. "Disappearing?" She nodded. "No signals. No survivors. Whole cities gone. At first, people said it was pirates. Or accidents. But our spies found something else. Someone's building a fleet. Massive ships. Weapons bigger than anything we saw in the last war." Her hands trembled slightly on the table. She wasn't a soldier, he realized. She was too young for the scars she carried. The old man's voice was low when he spoke. "What kind of weapons?" She hesitated, then reached into her cloak and slid a small black tablet across the table. Its screen lit up, showing images, grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough to feel the danger in them. The first image showed a planet-sized factory, rings of fire around it as ships carried metal and fuel to its surface. The second showed a massive warship under construction, so large it blocked out the stars behind it. The third showed a weapon, a long, narrow barrel stretching across the length of a station, glowing faintly red even while unfinished. The old man stared at the pictures in silence. "What is it?" he asked finally. "We call it the Eclipse Cannon," she said. "They say it can break through planetary shields in one shot." He felt his stomach sink. During the last war, planetary shields had been the only thing keeping civilian worlds safe. If this weapon could destroy them, entire planets would be defenseless. She swiped to another picture, this one of a tall alien in dark armor, standing before rows of soldiers. "This is their new leader," she said. "He calls himself Lord Varric. The old empire followed a council. He killed them all. Now, the fleets answer only to him." The old man studied the alien's face on the screen. Hard eyes. Cold expression. A man who believed in nothing but war. The girl's voice dropped even lower. "They say he's obsessed with finishing what the old empire started. And he knows who stopped them last time." The old man's eyes narrowed. "Me." She nodded. "They still fear your name, even after 15 years. And that's why they want you dead before the war begins." As if on cue, the cafe door opened behind them. The old man didn't turn, but he felt it, the shift in the air, the sudden silence, the heavy footsteps approaching. He had been a soldier too long not to recognize danger when it walked into the room. The girl tensed. Her hand went toward something under her cloak. A weapon, maybe. 3 men in dark coats entered, their faces hidden by shadows. They moved slowly, spreading out, blocking the exit. Not locals, not merchants, and definitely not here for coffee. The old man finally looked at them. Their eyes locked on him. Bounty hunters. Assassins. Maybe soldiers in disguise. The girl whispered, "They found us." The old man stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. His age showed in his hair, in the lines of his face, but not in his eyes. His eyes were sharp, cold. The eyes of a man who had survived too many battles to count. The lead assassin stepped forward. "Captain," he said mockingly, "the galaxy thought you were dead. Lord Varric sends his regards." He reached for the weapon at his belt, but the old man was faster. 15 years of peace had not dulled him. Before the assassin could draw, the old man grabbed the girl's arm and shoved her behind a table for cover. Blaster fire tore through the cafe. The quiet life he had built for 15 years burned away in seconds. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Blaster fire lit the cafe like lightning in a storm. Tables exploded into splinters, glass shattered, People screamed and ran for the back door. The old man moved with surprising speed for someone his age. In one motion, he shoved the girl to the floor behind an overturned table and snatched the blaster from the first assassin before the man even knew what happened. One shot. The lead assassin dropped, his weapon clattering across the floor. The other two hesitated for a second, clearly not expecting an unarmed old man to move like a soldier half his age. That was their mistake. The old man fired again, forcing them to dive for cover. "Stay down!" he barked at the girl, his voice cutting through the chaos. She had never heard anyone speak like that before. For a moment, she didn't see an old man. She saw the captain the galaxy used to talk about. The second assassin tried to flank them. The old man was ready. He shifted position, using the broken counter as cover, and fired twice. One shot missed. The second didn't. The last assassin cursed and ran for the door, clearly deciding Lord Varric didn't pay him enough for this job. The cafe fell silent except for the crackle of small fires. The smell of smoke and scorched metal filled the air. The girl slowly rose from behind the table, her eyes wide. You haven't lost it," she whispered. The old man tossed the empty blaster aside. His face was calm, but his heart pounded in his chest. It had been 15 years since he held a weapon. 15 years since the war. He thought he had buried that part of himself forever. But tonight proved something. The captain wasn't gone. He had only been sleeping. The girl touched his arm. "They won't stop," she said. "Now that they know you're alive, they'll send more. Stronger ones." He looked at her, his expression hard. "Then we move first." She nodded quickly. "We'll need a ship. A fast one." The old man shook his head. "No, not just any ship." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked out the shattered window at the stars above the spaceport. For 15 years, he had stayed away from the war, from the galaxy, from his own past. But there was one thing he couldn't ignore now. His ship, the Starlance. "You said it's still out there," he said. The girl nodded slowly. "Buried on a dead world. We found records. Coordinates. No one else knows." "Good," he said. "Because if Lord Varric wants a war, he's going to remember why he feared that name." The girl studied him. For the first time, there was something dangerous in the way he stood, the way he spoke. Like the quiet man who had lived in hiding for 15 years was gone. And the man the galaxy once called captain was slowly coming back. They left the cafe before security arrived. The girl led him through the crowded alleys near the spaceport, avoiding patrol drones. At a small docking bay, she pointed to a battered cargo ship. "It's not much," she admitted, "but it will get us to the coordinates." The old man looked at the ship, then at the stars above. His mind felt heavier than his steps. He had promised himself he would never return to this life. Never again fight wars for people who would forget his name when it was over. But then he thought of the images she had shown him, the massive fleet, the eclipse cannon, the dead colonies. He thought of the assassins tonight. He thought of the fear in her voice when she said billions could die. He couldn't walk away this time. Not when the galaxy was about to burn again. As the cargo ship rose from the spaceport, the girl sat in the pilot's seat, glancing at him. "You're really going back, aren't you?" she asked softly. The old man stared out the window at the stars rushing past. His jaw tightened. "First we find my ship," he said. "Then we end this before it begins." "But Varric's fleet is massive," she warned. "One ship against all that? Even the Starlance can't win alone." The old man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then we won't be alone." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. Not yet. Because in his mind, old names and faces were already waking up. Former crew, old soldiers, people who had fought beside him when the galaxy last needed saving. If he was going back to war, he wasn't going alone. The cargo ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving the quiet spaceport behind. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, buried under dust and silence, the Starlance waited for its captain to return. The journey through hyperspace felt longer than it was. The cargo ship shook as it crossed the void, its old engines groaning like tired animals. The girl sat at the controls, her eyes fixed on the blinking navigation screen. The old man, no, the captain, stood behind her, arms crossed, staring out at the swirling tunnel of stars. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, the girl broke the silence. The planet's name is Kaldor, she said. Dead world. No cities. No life. Just dust and ruins. Perfect place to hide something like your ship. The captain nodded slowly. He remembered the name. During the war, Kaldor had been a forward base, a secret refueling station. When the war ended, everyone abandoned it. Everyone except, apparently, the Starlance. The thought of seeing his ship again after 15 years sent a strange feeling through him. Something between dread and hope. That ship carried too many ghosts. Too many memories of battles won. And lives lost. But right now, the galaxy didn't care about his ghosts. It needed the Starlance. The planet appeared out of hyperspace like a dark scar against the stars. From orbit, Kaldor looked dead indeed. Gray deserts, cracked mountains, storms swirling over empty plains. Not a single light anywhere. The girl guided the cargo ship into the atmosphere. Winds slammed against the hull, rattling the cabin. Coordinates locked, she said over the noise. Below, through the clouds, the captain saw it. A giant canyon cutting across the land like a wound. At its center stood a massive hangar door half buried in rock and dust. Faded symbols of the old Earth fleet still marked its surface. The hidden base. And maybe his ship. The landing was rough. The cargo ship groaned as it touched the canyon floor. The wind screamed outside like a living thing. They stepped out into the storm. Dust stung their faces as they crossed the barren ground toward the giant hangar door. The girl pulled out a small control device she had taken from the archives. This should open it, she said, pressing the buttons. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep metallic roar, the massive doors shuddered and slowly began to slide open. Inside the darkness, lights flickered to life one by one. And there it was, the Starlance, covered in dust, scarred from old battles, but still beautiful. Sleek lines, heavy cannons along its sides, engines built for speed and power. The captain stared at it in silence. His chest tightened. For 15 years, he thought he'd never see it again. The girl looked at him, smiling faintly. She's waiting for you. He stepped forward slowly, boots echoing on the metal floor, eyes never leaving the ship. Memories flooded back. His crew laughing in the halls, the rumble of the engines at full power, the voices on the bridge calling him captain as enemy fleets closed in. This ship had been his home, his weapon, his legend, and now it would be his again. They didn't have long to admire it. Alarms suddenly blared through the hangar. The girl spun toward the entrance. Ships, she shouted. Incoming. The captain cursed under his breath. Of course, the enemy had followed them. Through the half-open hangar doors, black shapes appeared in the stormy sky. Sleek gunships dropping fast, lights glowing red in the dust. Lord Varric's hunters. The girl looked at the captain. What do we do? He didn't answer with words. He ran for the Starlance. Inside, the ship was dark but intact. Dust coated the control panels, but the systems hummed faintly when he powered them up. The engines coughed like they were waking from a long sleep. The girl dropped into the co-pilot's seat, eyes wide. Can she still fly? The captain's hands moved over the controls like he had never left. She can, he said. And she will. Outside, enemy gunships began landing troops near the canyon floor. Blaster fire cracked through the storm. The Starlance's engines roared to life. Lights flared along its hull. The captain gripped the controls. For 15 years, the galaxy had been quiet. For 15 years, he had been a ghost. Not anymore. The Starlance lifted off the ground, dust and debris swirling below as its cannons came online. Hold on, the captain said. The ship shot forward like an awakened beast. The first enemy gunship opened fire. Blue bolts of energy streaked through the storm. The captain rolled the Starlance hard to the right, engine screaming, then unleashed a barrage from the ship's main cannons. The gunship exploded in a ball of fire. The girl grinned despite the chaos. I think they just realized the captain is back. 3 more gunships closed in. The Starlance rose higher, engines glowing bright against the dark storm clouds. For the first time in 15 years, the captain felt alive again. The war hadn't even begun yet. But tonight, the galaxy had just heard its first warning shot. The Starlance climbed through the storm clouds like a beast reborn. Its engines roared, its cannons glowed, and for the first time in 15 years, the galaxy felt the return of its most feared warship. But Lord Varric was ready. Above the dead world, in the cold blackness of space, his fleet waited. Dozens of destroyers, fast interceptors, and one massive command ship hung like steel predators circling prey. And as the Starlance broke through the clouds, every gun turned toward it. Inside the ship, the girl gripped the co-pilot's seat, eyes wide as red lights flashed across the panels. "They've surrounded us," she said, voice tight. The captain's hands moved over the controls with calm precision. "Good," he muttered. "Saves us the trouble of finding them." He flipped a switch, and the ship's shields roared to life. Energy crackled along the Starlance's hull as enemy ships opened fire. Blue bolts of plasma streaked across the void, slamming into the shields with bone-shaking force. The girl braced herself. "Can we survive this?" The captain's eyes were cold. "We won't just survive," he said. "We'll remind them why they feared this ship." The Starlance moved like a ghost among giants. Enemy fighters swarmed around it, but the captain flew with impossible skill, weaving through incoming fire, rolling the ship between enemy formations. The ship's cannons spat fire, tearing interceptors apart one by one. "Two on our tail," the girl shouted. The captain pulled the ship into a steep climb, then cut engines for half a second. The pursuing fighters shot past, unable to slow in time. The Starlance's rear guns flared. Both fighters exploded in twin bursts of fire. The girl stared at him. "You flew like this in the war?" He didn't look at her. Better. But the enemy was learning. Destroyers moved in from both sides, trying to trap them in a crossfire. The command ship at the center began charging its main cannon, energy gathering along its long black barrel. The girl saw it on the radar screen. "They're going to fire." The captain's mind worked quickly. The Starlance couldn't take a direct hit from that weapon. Not head-on. "Hang on," he said. He threw the ship into a dive, skimming along the surface of the planet below as the enemy fleet followed. Plasma bolts rained down around them, exploding against the canyon walls. The entire sky burned with red and blue light. "Shields at 50%, the girl called out. The captain gritted his teeth. The Starlance could take punishment, but not forever. He needed an opening. And then he saw it. A fuel ship drifted near one of the destroyers, its tanks glowing faintly. If he could hit it at the right moment, he swung the Starlance around, lining up the shot. Enemy fighters chased close behind, firing constantly. "Now," he whispered. The Starlance's main cannons fired. The fuel ship exploded in a massive fireball, the blast wave tearing through the nearest destroyer and scattering the fighters chasing them. The girl grinned. "That's one way to clear the skies." The captain didn't smile. He was already turning toward the command ship. Lord Varric watched from the bridge of his flagship, his red eyes narrowing. "The old man flies well," he growled. "But end this. Now." The command ship's main cannon finished charging. A beam of pure energy burst toward the Starlance. The captain saw it coming. At the last second, he rolled the Starlance hard to the right. The beam missed by meters, slicing a canyon into the planet's surface below. "Too close," the girl gasped. The captain's voice stayed calm. "We end this now." The Starlance shot forward, engines screaming as it closed the distance to the command ship. Enemy fighters tried to block the way, but the captain flew like a man who had nothing left to lose. The ship's forward cannons lit up the darkness, blasting through enemy lines. "Target their main gun," he ordered. The girl locked weapons. "Ready. Fire." The Starlance unleashed everything: missiles, plasma, railguns. The enemy's shields cracked under the assault. The main cannon exploded in a chain of blinding fire, tearing half the command ship apart. Lord Varric's fleet began to scatter. The Starlance rose through the debris and smoke, its guns still glowing, its engines burning bright. For the first time in years, the galaxy had seen what it thought was gone forever. The captain was back. But the girl looked at the radar screen and froze. "Captain, there's more," she whispered. Beyond the wreckage, deeper in space, new signals appeared. Bigger ships. A whole second wave of Varric's fleet jumping into the system. The girl's voice shook. This was just the beginning. The captain stared at the growing threat on the screen. The final storm was coming. And this time it would decide the fate of the entire galaxy. The radar screen filled with red dots. More ships. Bigger than before. Lord Varric's second wave had arrived. A fleet so massive it turned the stars dark behind it. The girl stared in silence. "There are too many," she whispered. The captain's hands rested on the controls. His face stayed calm, but his eyes burned with the weight of what was coming. He had been in battles before. He had faced fleets, storms, entire armies. But this was different. This wasn't just a fight. This was the last stand. And he knew it. The enemy fleet spread out, engines glowing red, weapons locking on the Starlance. At the center, Lord Varric's new flagship moved forward, a black spear cutting through the darkness. The size dwarfed even the biggest destroyers. On its bridge, Lord Varric stood tall, his armor shining under cold lights. His voice carried through the fleet's channel, deep and full of hatred. "Old man," Varric said, "you should have stayed dead. The galaxy belongs to me now." The captain's reply was steady. "Not while I'm still flying." Varric's laugh echoed through the comms. "Then die with your ship." The first wave hit like a hammer. Enemy destroyers fired all at once, filling the void with burning light. The Starlance twisted through space, its shields flaring under the assault. The girl locked weapons, returning fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked through the dark, cannons roared, fighters exploded in flashes of orange and blue. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, 3 more closed in. The girl's voice shook. "We can't hold them off forever." The captain didn't answer. His eyes stayed on Varric's flagship. He knew the truth. This battle wasn't about destroying the whole fleet. It was about ending Varric. "Bring us in close," the captain ordered. The girl looked at him like he was mad. "Close? That ship will tear us apart." He set the course himself, the Starlance cutting through enemy lines like a blade. Fighters swarmed, destroyers turned their guns toward them. But the captain flew with the precision of a man who had nothing left to fear. One thought filled his mind. End Varric, end the war. Varric watched the Starlance coming straight for him. "Fool," he muttered. "End him." The flagship unleashed its full power. Massive cannons lit up the darkness, beams of energy slicing toward the Starlance. The ship shook violently as shots slammed into its shields. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. "Shields at 30%, the girl shouted. The captain's jaw tightened. "Hold together, old girl," he whispered to the ship, his hands steady on the controls. Just a little longer. They broke through the last line of enemy fighters, the flagship filling the view ahead like a black mountain. The captain locked all weapons on its bridge. But before he could fire, Varric's voice came again. "You can't win, Captain. Even if you kill me, my fleet will finish what I began." The captain finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Maybe, but you won't live to see it." And with that, he launched everything the Starlance had left, missiles, plasma bolts, railgun rounds, hammering the flagship's shields in a storm of fire. The flagship fought back, tearing into the Starlance with brutal fury. Alarms screamed. Fires erupted along the lower decks. The girl's hands flew across controls, rerouting power, fighting to keep the ship alive. But the captain didn't slow down. He drove the Starlance forward, closing the distance until they were almost on top of the flagship. And then he made his choice. He turned to the girl. "Get to the escape pod," he said. Her eyes widened. "What? No. I'm not leaving you. Do it, he said firmly. The Starlance is too damaged. She won't survive this. But you will. Realization hit her like a blade. You're going to ram them, she whispered. The captain didn't answer. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. This was the only way to finish it. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. No. There has to be another way. He gave her the faintest smile, the first one she had seen from him. It's been an honor to fly with you, he said softly. Now go. She hesitated, then ran. The captain turned the Starlance straight toward the flagship's main reactor. Varric realized too late what was happening. Stop him! Varric roared, but his fleet was too slow. The Starlance hit the flagship like a falling star. The explosion tore through space, a blinding wave of fire and light consuming both ships in a single heartbeat. When it cleared, only wreckage floated where Varric's fleet had been. The remaining enemy ships broke formation, leaderless, retreating into the void. The war was over. Hours later, rescue crews found the girl's escape pod drifting among the debris. She watched silently as the remains of the Starlance burned in the distance. The galaxy would remember that final flight. The captain had given his life to save it. And as she whispered the old words, "It's an honor to serve you, Captain," the stars themselves seemed to bow in silence.